Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Very excited to have my next guest on the show. She is the director of Shatterproof at FHE Health, and she's also a friend of mine. And we're going to talk about a variety of different good things in this show. She is Dr. Sachi Ananda. Welcome, Dr. Sachi.
Yes. Hi, Pat.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm really thrilled to be on this show with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. And,
Yeah.
we can get into how I know you in a minute. But yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up working with first responders and doing the amazing work that you do.
Well, I ask myself that every day. How did I end up here, and how did I get so lucky and privileged to work with such an incredible population of people, the first responders? Um, well, I started off with a variety of different career fields. I
Mhm.
actually started off as a newspaper reporter.
Oh, wow. Must have been fun.
It was fun. I was the editor of an actual Asian American newspaper in Seattle called the International Examiner. Now, if people were to look that up, they'd be like, okay, she's lying. I don't see a Sachi with the International Examiner.
I'm
And
Googling
I
it now.
actually had a different name. My birth
Oh,
name I was going by up until I moved to end of my years living in the Pacific Northwest and in Florida. So I changed my name to Dr. Sachi Ananda, which is actually my spiritual name.
oh, wow. I mean, I
Yeah.
would love to talk about that
Yeah.
more. I mean, I think, well, first of all, for the listener, how I know Dr. Sachi is she was my therapist when I was a patient down at Shatterproof, and I'm not ashamed to say that. And I'm an open book, Dr. Sachi, like and we've had many discussions, obviously, when I was with you when I was down there. But one of the things we talked about was spirituality and law of attraction, and all those things that you believe in, and I'm all for that. Now, if you would have asked me that maybe a handful of years ago, I would have been no.
Right.
But I love how that's your spiritual name. Can you dive a little bit more into that?
Yeah, and I just, I'm thank you for sharing. And this is totally voluntary. And even Pat and I talked about this before the show about me being your therapist while you're here. Is I'm used to being the listener
Yeah.
and I ask the questions.
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
you to talk, and now it's the tables have turned.
The tables have turned. All right, I'm going to ask you some tough questions.
Yes,
No, I'm
some
just kidding.
childhood trauma issues.
No, Dr. Sachi is wonderful, and for the listeners, you really have to look at her site and what she's doing for Shatterproof. But yeah, getting back into your spiritual name, I mean that's amazing stuff. I think it's great.
Yeah, so that the spiritual piece really gets into how I got into this role, because I feel like it was only by the grace of God and
Mhm.
the universe had some greater plan for me that I had no clue was going to happen in my future. And I could have never dreamed I'd be in this type of position.
Yeah.
But so I started off as a newspaper reporter, worked for a nonprofit world, fighting the fight for immigrant voices.
Yeah.
And I decided that instead of just being more of an observer and capturing people's stories, I want to be able to have much more of an influence
Mhm.
and an impact. Um, and so I started getting interested in doing therapy work, but it was really my teacher, my spiritual guru, who she was doing work in addiction using some of her meditative practices and her philosophies. And I was at the time transitioning. I got laid off from the newspaper world
Mhm.
because I moved from the journalistic part to the advertising part. And at that stage, the economy wasn't doing so good, but also in general, there was such a big change from media turning to online.
Yeah, I can imagine from print to
Yes,
digital.
exactly. So when I moved to the business side of the journalism world, I just wasn't for me. I can't sell anything.
Yeah.
I'm no salesperson.
I think we're all salesperson to
Yeah,
to a
I think
degree,
so.
yeah, I think we are. We're selling something every day. For example, we're in the business of providing help for people. We're selling. I think we're salespeople, every one of us, but some people like it and some people don't. But I think we're always constantly selling. I
You
mean,
know,
like I asked you, I said, "Hey,
yeah.
Dr. Sashi, come on my show." I sold you it. No,
Yeah.
I'm serious. I mean, I think we're all
Well, you know, I
salespeople.
do anything that you
Yeah,
ask.
but I could see how some people, man,
You know, that's funny. I hadn't really thought of that, but I do in many ways sell um recovery
yeah,
and
exactly.
getting better. And I guess maybe in sales it's motivating people to do something.
Yeah, it's not your traditional sales, but I think we're all deep down we're trying to, and I maybe sell is not the appropriate word, but we're trying to convey a message. We're trying to get a
Yeah.
message across. We're trying to give back. And
Mhm.
so in a roundabout way, I think that is selling.
Yes. So back to how I got here. So I was laid off from the newspaper world, had some time to get retrained by the government with unemployment and the benefits related to that. So I looked down the list of all the retraining opportunities I had, and what stood out was drug counseling.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, this is cool. You know, my guru's doing it and she's doing some amazing work. And I thought, whoa, great. I had this really naive idea about the recovery world, which was I can't wait to help people and get better. And what I discovered was people with an addiction are probably the most resistant clients you're going to get. Like, typically, they don't come voluntarily. They come because there's either been some type of intervention with family, problems at work, or a problem with legal issues like a DUI and whatnot. So I had this naive idea that people would just love to hear what I had to say, how to help them, but it wasn't the reality at all. You know,
Yeah.
they kind of, like I said, come kicking and screaming. And even during the treatment process, a lot of it's so much about helping them uncover that denial and get the acceptance that they have a problem.
Yeah.
And then once they get the acceptance, they have to then ask for help. So like so many stages. So I came in a little naive about what I could do, and it was really great learning on my part. I learned on my own too that I had some affiliation with. My father was a drinker, although I wouldn't say like alcoholic per se, but you know, as I'm talking, I'm thinking I'm rationalizing a lot of his behaviors.
Yeah.
I still got some work to do on my own here. But he got like DUIs.
Yeah.
I'm Vietnamese, by the way, Vietnamese American,
Yeah.
and the Vietnamese male culture tends to have a lot of drinking. And I think in my mind that's how I normalized it and thought it was
Yeah. It
okay
was
and
just
healthy.
part of the culture. Yeah.
Yeah, just part of you hanging out with the Vietnamese guys was drinking. Um, and then I looked further and I saw like ex-boyfriends and ex-husband. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Gosh, you know, I think they had problems with alcohol too.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of light bulbs come on while I was getting trained in the drug addiction recovery world of my own stuff, issues of codependency and boundaries and all this other crap
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
personally had to work through. And thankfully, I'm on a spiritual path that really helped me like grow. And so when my guru, I was living in Seattle at the time, and then my guru um, moved out of Seattle into Florida, trying to get some more sun. And me again being naive, I was like, oh, I'll go to Florida. Sounds great, you know, follow my teacher.
Yeah.
And turned out, wow, South Florida turns out to be the recovery capital of the world. I was like, oh my God, I just studied this and I just found the best job
Yeah.
and so many jobs to choose from. So there's the universe working in my favor.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I was at a previous treatment center doing the drug addiction work, but then I realized, wow, substance abuse, actually, there's so much mental health that
Yeah.
goes along with it. And in fact, the world is changing, even healthcare, where they're saying that substance abuse is really probably driven by underlying mental health issues.
Absolutely.
So then I decided I wanted to get my master's degree in mental health counseling so I could be more of a general therapist. Then as I moved along, I realized, wow, one thing I noticed is a lot of people with addiction, mental health problems, there oftentimes is some sexual or sex abuse issue, sexual trauma. And, not a lot of people are talking about it.
Hmm.
It's a very hard, sensitive topic for a variety of reasons. And then that's what prompted me to get into the clinical sexology doctorate, which I have as my, that I studied. And so I had all this training on top of the sexuality work. And then also I got into trauma work with learning about EMDR. Then I got hired, luckily, through a colleague to FHE Health, at the time called Florida House. And I started off, I knew there's something that drew me to working with first responders. And to this day, I still don't exactly know. But I just have I feel like I can really relate to a lot of the issues with first responders. And I just have so much respect for what they've committed their life to do and what problems they have and barriers to their career and serving their community and family stuff. I just knew I wanted to work with first responders, and the program director at the time, she took a gamble on me. We just connected on many different levels,
Yeah.
personally and professionally. And she's just like, you know what? I want you to try you out with the first responder program.
Yeah.
And
Rest is history.
the rest is history.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's an amazing journey. And I really love the fact that you said law of attraction, the universe a couple times. I'm, as you know, Dr. Sachi, I'm a big believer in that. And it's amazing to me how the universe, God, whatever you believe in, always puts us where we need to be at the time. I mean, at least in my opinion.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
I mean, we're always at the right place and time, even though it might suck and I want to be there. And who
Yeah.
wants to go to treatment? I mean, very little people, if any, wants to go to treatment, but we're always in the place, I think, where we need to be.
Yeah, and at the time, like you say, it feels like this is the wrong thing
Yeah.
at the wrong time. Like this is gonna be the worst time for something like whatever
When is
adversity.
the right time?
Exactly.
I tell
And
people, look, the traffic lights of life are not going to be green all the time. So sometimes you got to take that chance and follow your intuition or what your inner voice is telling you to do. And the one thing that I learned, Dr. Sachi, when I was down there through you and others through treatment was, empathy. Now I'm more empathetic than ever, having been through, treatment and still in recovery, that I am more empathetic, not just to first responders that are suffering. Of course, that's my background, but just anybody who's suffering out there, because there's so many of us that are suffering, from mental health challenges, addiction challenges. And I agree with you. It all stems back to mental health, but I'm much more empathetic than I was before.
that's what's so awesome. I mean, there's so many levels of coming to a program like Shatterproof. It's just the areas that it can impact. Of course, you yourself, you get better. But then now you have more empathy for other first responders and just in general, other people with addiction and mental health problems. Wow, just think if other people in the world, first responder or non-first responder, could experience that, then how much of a better world would we be if people were more compassionate about each other's?
Absolutely. Just taking a couple steps, because I think what happens with a lot of people, I'd love to hear your opinion. A lot of people just, they want everything at once.
Hmm.
They want to get better, like right now, but
Or
it's not,
yesterday, yeah.
or yesterday, but it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you take those baby steps, one step at a time, you're going to keep improving, because it's a process. But I think a lot of people just punch a clock, whatever, say, I want to get done with this, get back to my life. And I always tell people, look, for me, Dr. Sachi, the real work began once I left treatment.
Oh my gosh,
I
absolutely.
mean, that's when I'm at the airport going, holy crap, this is reality.
Hmm.
I'm out of my bubble
Yes.
now that this is the real work. So I tell people all that all the time. I mean, the treatment is amazing. The only kind of in the country, but it doesn't stop with there. It doesn't stop when I leave.
Exactly.
And people, as you know, people come back sometimes for a second time, and that's no shame in that.
Yeah, and I see, of course, we love it one and done. and we'd love to provide that that guarantee that one time we'll do it.
Yeah.
But I've worked with clients who are been coming back, and every time it's something else, some deeper layer we're getting to.
Yeah.
And you think that, okay, that's got to be it, right? But
Yeah.
no, there's more there, and that's
I
I think
know. It's like an onion.
that's
It's like an onion. It's like peeling back an
yeah.
onion.
And I think that's even more so true than first responders, because you guys wear that mask and that exterior facade so well. Then you've had to cover up what's really going on inside so you can do your job. There's so many more layers than the civilian
Yeah.
that,
We,
that to go to unpeel and to get to.
so we were talking beforehand, and there's a lot of treatment out there, treatment options available. Ton of them. It seems like everybody now has a first responder program, jumping on it. FHE has been around for a long time. You know that. Why should people out there, why should the listener consider coming to Shatterproof when there's so many different options out there?
Mhm. Well, I think that's a great question. And I definitely want to put out there, like, getting any help is better than nothing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So like me, again, not being a salesperson, I wouldn't want anybody to think that we're the only place. But I do think we're a special place. And I think
Absolutely.
that there's something about FHE Health and Shatterproof in particular, like, there's a lot of heart. And I just feel like that can be felt by the quality of care that we give. Now, we're not perfect, and no one,
Nobody
we
is.
never, yeah, no one is, and we never pretend to be. But I'll tell you that the staff here, from the CEO on down, many of us give 110%,
Yeah.
because we have a really strong passion for first responders and getting them better. Do we get stressed out? Yes. Do we get overwhelmed and things don't go exactly right and all that?
That's life.
That's life. Yes.
But we do it pretty damn good, if you ask me.
But I think, going back to what you said, as far as the ability to give a variety of services to first responders, considering the complexity of their issues, a bit places where they have a program or a track for first responders, they just, because of the infrastructure, they just don't have probably the ability, the resources to provide a variety of services that FHE can. So FHE Health can, which is the benefit of us being part of a bigger program, is we got access to all the other services. We
Sure.
got psychiatric, neuro rehab services, unbeatable, I think, across the country. First responders, a lot of them come for that. We've got the bio bed, we've got different trauma interventions. I mean, you name it, we got it.
Yeah.
So one intervention may not work for you. Like, I don't know, Pat, for you, you're the one that worked for you the best, and the ones that worked for you least. If that didn't work, that's okay. We got this too.
Yeah, we got this too.
We got
Here's the
this
other
too.
option. We could do acupuncture or music therapy or
Music there,
or
art therapy.
yoga or breath work or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be a client. I could use some.
Well, it's so funny. A little secret to the listener. I actually, and this is the truth. I was so amazed down there. I got such good treatment that I actually asked Dr. Sachi, "Hey, can I stay a little longer?"
Yes.
Yeah, you were
Yes.
like, "Now you got to discharge." But getting
Our
back to
biggest problem, actually, is that no one wants to leave. A lot of
yeah,
facilities are trying to prevent people from leaving treatment early, AMA, against medical, and our biggest problem is no one wants to leave.
yeah. And there's you said it. There's something about there. Obviously, it's the people down there, like you and other staff members that are working down there. But and I hate to sound corny, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's like a magic going on down there. And some of the best times I had, because we're all first responders, fire, EMS, doesn't matter where, we're in our own little section over there. Some of the best times I had were just sitting around with other first responders and people having open and transparent communication. That's something you don't see. And
Yeah.
I'm talking about first responders from around the country, just sitting in the courtyard where we're at and just having these amazing conversations. But that's the type of synergy or whatever you want to call it that happens down there, is most people are not ashamed anymore that they're in treatment, and they feel comfortable with opening up to people like you and to other first responders that actually work for the program. That's another thing. A lot of them are former first responders, fire, veterans and things like that, which is another huge plus.
Well, you hit upon the secret sauce, that it's the community connection. We have all these great services and treatment and therapy. The whole point of that is actually to create the least amount of distractions so that the community can really connect with each other. And that's the true healing, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Exactly. Being at the housing, at the barbecues together, sitting around after the groups and actually just being yourself for once.
Taking off that mask.
Taking off the mask and that judgment that you may have had of others and other people or first responders before you came to treatment, that goes away. And you just become heart to heart, talking to each other, being genuine, but also calling each other out on stuff like that.
You can't try to BSers,
Exactly. And what fills my heart the most is, and we just had FHE alumni camp.
I know. Yeah.
And there were, for the first time, a dozen of our Shatterproof alumni had come all the way from Alaska, paid their own way, spent how many hours on the plane to get to this 3-day retreat. And it just filled my heart because they were telling me a lot of them still keep in touch, sometimes like even daily, like they're doing daily hellos and months, a year or two after they've been together in the program. Like that to me, like it's so special. We're planting seeds and the clients are watering it to bloom so that you have this entire network of support after you leave the program.
Absolutely.
You said, the work is after you leave.
Right? And I still talk to your point. I still have a text thread that I talk to about 10 or 15, probably it's 15 former patients that I was in treatment with. And we chat, we might not get on the phone every day, but we're constantly texting each other. And when one is down, the others are lifting him or her up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to travel from like Alaska, I mean, that says a lot about the program. And just for the listener, once you're done with the program, and Dr. Sachi knows this, and other people that might be listening, is you're alumni. So you still have access to things that at FHE Health and Shatterproof. It's not like, okay, see you, you're out the door, goodbye, good luck. No, we set up IOP and all that other stuff, as you know, Dr. Sachi.
Yeah, and we also, I think we have a strong alumni Facebook, and there have been support group Zoom meetings, self-initiated by alumni that's across the country now. So it's just,
and that's huge, and that's being a part of that community once you exit, still being part of that community is very powerful. Mm-hmm. Now, we were talking beforehand about, you're a clinician, you've been doing this a long time, you talk to a lot of first responders. Why is it so difficult for first responders, in your expert opinion, to come forward and say, look, I need help amid, it only happens when everything is burned down, figuratively speaking, everything is in the toilet. Why is it so hard to get first responders to make that call? Mm-hmm. And to come forward? What do you think about that? I'm sure you get that a lot.
Yeah. And, I'm a big believer in looking at some of the early childhood development stuff and how that really affects how people grow as adults and develop as adults. But it seems like by and large, first responders become first responders or want to become first responders because they've faced adversity growing up, whether it was within their own family where, let's say, one of the parents wasn't around very much, and they had to be the primary, or practically head of household, had to be the one to take care of everybody. They're interested in getting a career where they're helping other people.
Yeah, so they're dealing with a lot with childhood stuff, which I agree with.
Exactly. So if you grow up and, people also tend to, if they were bullied growing up, they may end up wanting to be a police officer because they don't want to have anybody be a victim of that kind of thing ever.
Hmm.
Or if they experienced themselves or just witnessed it and they were the protector, they may naturally want to go into that type of field. So they've already built that shell around them from under the age of 18. So they've already learned that their feelings come last and other people's comes first because that's what they are, their
Trained to
jobs
do. Yeah.
trained to
Yeah.
do. Exactly. And so you get that, and then you get first responders who've been a first responder for 1 or 2 decades. Think about how much even more that's been instilled and validated. You're the one with help. I'm okay. I don't need it. If I
I
needed
got to be strong, and it's a
yes.
sign of weakness is if I come forward.
Mhm. Yeah, and it can be part of your identity. And if you take away the fact that I'm the helper, not the victim or the person who needs help, if you take that away from me, wow, what do I really have? And we're talking, I just want to put out there, we're talking about um, first responders who may not have a very strong foundation in themselves, where they may at some point later in their life develop a substance or a mental health problem. Because I always have to remember too, I might have kind of a skewed view of first responder world because I work with like the ones that have been very sick,
Hmm.
probably very sick for a very long time. So I probably tend to talk in extremes, and I just want to put it out. I don't mean to talk into extremes, but what I see with the clients I work with is just a very long history of overcoming trauma after trauma, starting from a young age and carrying that through to their jobs, where things just get worse. Because if you haven't done healthy things in your life, before becoming a first responder or while on the job, that just compiles and everything gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's only so much that we can fill our cup up with, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much trauma that you can see. I don't care how big and bad you think you are. Eventually, it's going to spill over
Mhm.
into addiction, like you said, failed relationships, whatever you want to. And I speak from example. There's only so much that your cup can fill,
Mhm.
and then it's going to bleed over. It's going to spill.
Right. If you're playing a first responder on the job and then also a first responder-ish type of person with your family, taking care of everything, always being there for everybody, 24/7, you're there. Where's the time for your own self-care? And so you can imagine if your whole world is if your family sees you as the first responder and the job sees you and your community sees you, imagine how hard it is to then say, take that off and actually take the step to say you need help. That rocks your whole world if you
Well,
have to.
absolutely. And you mentioned identity. I know for me, when I left, I went through like an identity crisis. It was like,
Yeah.
okay, who am I? Well, nobody's calling me anymore. Nobody's, the latest crisis or whatever it is. All right, we got to figure this out. It was okay. I'm no longer a cop anymore, or a fireman, or a paramedic, or EMS, or whatever. So I think a lot of people, in my opinion, go through that. I'm okay. Who am I? This was
Mhm.
what I was trained to do for so many years. I don't.
I think that's the biggest problem I see. First responders come in after they've retired, no longer on the job, or those who have somehow been injured or somehow not in the field anymore, either by choice or not. It's can be a huge identity crisis. Exactly. Who am I
Yeah,
without that?
yeah. Who am I? What do I do now? How do I go
Yeah.
forward? What do I? How do I, you know, figure out my life?
Hmm.
And there's no shame, as you know, in coming forward and saying, "Look, I need help." But it's so hard, as we were talking about, to get people to that point. Of saying it's okay to come forward. I think we're getting better. I don't know what your opinion is. I mean, it's society as a whole, but I think we got a long
Absolutely.
road ahead.
Yes. I think departments across the country are getting better with supporting their officers or firefighters or whatnot who have a problem, rather than just trying to terminate them.
Mhm.
That they are seeing that there's mental health and addiction problems, that if they can get help, they come back to be even better at their jobs. I think that's it's slowly happening, that
And
and
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to give credit to the peer support teams out there, because they're fighting the fight there. They're helping each other and
Yeah,
seeing problems, and only, really the peers have the largest influence, whether someone's going to get help or can even
absolutely.
talk to another person. It's that other officer, it's that other firefighter.
And that's another issue that, as you probably know, Dr. Sachi, that a lot of departments and organizations struggle with, is that internal culture of an organization. I'm not painting everybody the same way, but a lot of sometimes it's just a culture. You just don't, you might walk the walk and talk the talk, but the actions say otherwise. And, that's a big problem, I think, that is still occurring in a lot of organizations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it all starts, like you mentioned, from when we started with the brain. We're learning so much about the brain, and that's why I love FHE and Shatterproof, because we're doing a lot with brain work, and brain health and stuff. And once you can kind of recalibrate that big organ on top of your head or your head, everything seems to get better, right?
Oh, for sure. And that's what's, um, and I'd say in the past decade, just there's been so much more knowledge about the brain, and it's really great to see a place like this that can keep up with it, because it's exponential how much they're learning about how the brain affects everything.
Yeah. And once you get that figured out, I think it's still a lot of hard work. But as soon as I got done with neurotherapy down there, I was like, okay, coupled with all the other treatment modalities I was going through, I was like, holy, it was like a light switch.
Oh, right.
It was
Nice.
it was like, wow, because it's actually helping repair those areas of the brain that needs attention. Which before, years ago, we didn't know much,
Mhm.
but we're constantly learning.
What was it like for you? I'm curious when you saw the results of your brain map.
It was amazing. So for the listener, we're talking about neuro therapy. And it's different from neurofeedback. This is neurotherapy, where neurostimulation is what they call it. But Dr. Sachi asked, so you at the beginning of treatment, you get a scan of your brain, and then at the end of treatment, now in the middle are treatments, but at the end, you get a before and after, and it's night and day. It's actually on the website, FHE website, you can check out. It is literally night and day. Okay, here are the areas, and they're colored, and then now there's no more color anymore, and it was, I can't describe it. It was amazing what we're doing down there,
Wow.
and that gets back to, again, I know I'm beating this. We talked about it a little bit, but that's what I think one of the big distinguishers between what we're doing down there and other programs. But,
Yeah, great.
well, Dr. Sachi, I appreciate your time. Any final words out there? Any words of encouragement that you want to give the listener about treatment, coming forward, life, spirituality, whatever you want?
Well, I do want to say, because you've been open, Pat, about your journey and your therapy and me working with you. Um, I just think if somebody like you can have a positive experience and to now do what you're doing and just trying to help other first responders getting help, that just speaks volumes to what we are trying to do here. And if we can make one cop happy, we can make,
And firefighter
and firefighters.
and EMS, and we can't. She didn't mention me. I'm a firefighter. No, all first responders, right?
But I think just in general, like again, like it's of course we love. I'm heavily biased about Shatterproof,
Yeah,
obviously,
me
but
too.
just having conversations now, talking about PTSD and mental health and substance with first responders is such a huge step forward. And with all the stress that's happening in this date and time of where we're at, all the struggles and the challenges, with society, I really feel a lot of hope that things are getting better.
Mhm.
It's going to take more time. It's going to take anybody listening, whatever you can do to help support a first responder, to open up, to even just ask him, how are you doing? No, I really want to know how you're doing, not just the typical response, I'm good, I'm fine, and just really sit down and spend 5 minutes with them, whatever you can do to help our struggling first responders. If I could leave with a message, is, a smile, a thank you,
Yeah,
anything.
that means a lot,
Yeah.
when somebody comes up and even shakes my hand and says, when I was on the job, and said, thank you for what you do. I mean, that makes my day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just simple gestures like that too, that mean the world to first respond, is military too.
Yes.
So amazing. And that, let's not forget too, I mean, obviously Florida, we were talking about it before, Dr. Sachi, you just got hit with a devastating hurricane. So
Oh,
keep in
yes.
mind all the people out there, for the listeners, prayers go to Florida, as well as the first responders that are now going to have to work in the aftermath of such devastation.
Yes, thank you for that. We wish the state here and everybody who's been affected to be safe.
Dr. Sachi, you're amazing. Thank you for taking the time coming on the show. If people want to reach out to you, how can they find you and learn more about you?
Oh yes, well, I'm happy to. I believe I'm on the website. I think my face
You
is on
are.
there.
You're on the website.
And I'd give Pat your permission, give my email, office number. I'd love to hear
Yeah.
from anybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Sachi. God bless you. And I'll see you sometime down the road in the near future.
Good. Yes, I know you were supposed to come too, and the hurricane got in the
Yeah,
way.
hurricane was like,
Shoot.
I might be kind of hard giving a tour in, however the winds were and
Oh
the rain.
yeah,
So,
gosh.
but we'll make it up. We'll be down there, and I'll be down there soon.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for having me on
All
the
right, Dr.
show.
Sachi. Thank
All
you.
right. Take
Bye-bye.
care.